With the Dark Angels Codex supplement on the horizon, there is an inevitable pressure and desire to make a thematic list build featuring the new units and new detachments. But with that being the case, you might be thinking, why bother doing a Dark Angels thematic list build now? Well, my dear viewers, there just so happens to be both a theme and grievance I wish to address. A theme and grievance for which the present detachment is apt, and so we may as well take care of it. This one is for the honored First Legion, the Legion which, despite what the memes have to say, are unquestionably loyal. It's a thematic list build for the Dark Angels. The Dark Angels detachment is the Unforgiven Task Force. The detachment rule it provides is Grim Resolve, following the naming convention of their chapter tactics from 9th and 8th edition. But the real question is, how do I feel about it? GW has yet again given the Dark Angels a pretty poor detachment rule. I'll qualify this. Retaining OC upon failing Battle Shock is technically a potent exception, one which can lead to playmaking outcomes. But can is the operating word, as this rule has some pretty hefty conditions it must pass in order to provide value. I'll demonstrate. Your unit must suffer enough damage to fall below half strength. That unit must still not be destroyed by the time your turn comes around. Then you must fail the Battle Shock test. And then finally, your unit must be on or poised to interact with an objective marker. Either already on an objective in your command phase when Battle Shock most commonly occurs, allowing you to score it when you otherwise would not be able to, or that unit must have the potential to contest an objective so your enemy cannot score on their turn. These are all conditional gates, meaning you must pass each of these conditional circumstances in order for the mechanic to provide value. More often than not, the fewer conditions an ability or mechanic has, the better it will serve you. But it stands to reason that a detachment rule with heavy conditions, which doesn't provide value for the vast majority of the game, can be balanced out by supplementing that lack with potent stratagems and enhancements. Though regrettably, that doesn't seem to be the case here. Now, the Unforgiven Task Force's enhancements and stratagems are by no means bad. In fact, I'd say they're up to the functional standards of 10th edition. But it means those mechanics do not compensate for the condition-laden detachment rule. Instead, about half of them, the 4 enhancements and 1 stratagem, become more potent when the conditions of the first 3 gates are passed, essentially doubling down on the specific circumstances. In closing, the Unforgiven Task Force gets a rating of meh from me. It's okay, though it does score some points for theme, as there is something to say for the Dark Angels detachment rule, the rule which applies most broadly, the rule which most characterizes them from their peers, to see them going all in, to obsessively prepare for very unlikely circumstances.
And if we believe there's even a 1% chance.
When it comes to the thematic objectives of the list, they are... Now, I'll just preface this, I have a very particular list goal in mind for this one, and it's rooted in a position some might find to be a bit of a hot take. It seems to me GW is doing the Dark Angels theme dirty. I'm not talking about their knightly aspect, which feels well served enough. I'm talking about their weapons from the Dark Age. Over time, the Dark Angels' weapons from the Dark Age have come to describe 2 things: a collection of 4 Ravenwing units, and plasma weapons. Plasma weaponry is not to the Dark Angels what flame weaponry is to the Salamanders. Framing it in such a way essentially takes that thematic aspect and turns it into a meme. You see, weapons from the Dark Age mean so much more. It's a badge of trust, a reminder of their dark purpose, and importantly, it's an honor placed upon them by the Emperor. In summary, weapons of the Dark Age should not simply be, our plasma is better than yours. And so the thematic goal for this list is, weapons from the Dark Age. I want to characterize this list, hell, the Dark Angels themselves, so they don't simply feel like dark green Primaris. And there just happens to be a game system with models of the right aesthetic and scale to better flex weapons from the Dark Age, despite what GW is trying to push. Yeah, we're doing Legends. We're starting off with a Dark Age staple, a Lord of War that makes the Land Raiders of the present weak in the knees, or treads. A Spartan fitted with 2 laser destroyers. It's T12, 18 wounds, with a 2-up armor save. I've opted for the laser destroyers over the quad las cannons mainly because I think their greater strength and AP well reflect the might of this Dark Age weapon. And strength 14 with AP 4 is a great breakpoint against other armored targets. The Spartan also possesses a whopping 28 transport slots, and its ability is suitably in line with the Land Raider. It has assault ramps. Speaking of which, riding inside of that Spartan is not 1, but 2 squads of 10 assault intercessors, a configuration evoking the legions of old. I've chosen to give each of the sergeants power fists, but I'd recommend going for a tasteful proxy to lean into the knightly aspect for those inclined. The primary job of these 2 units is to fight over and flip objectives, for which their ability is ideal for the job, allowing them to punch up against targets on objectives. And as a battle line unit, each squad will have a total of 20 OC for the task. And one of those units is going to be led by an ancient with a power sword. He's leading them for 2 reasons. 1, he adds 1 to the OC of models in his unit in case you need 30 OC, and 2, to wave a Dark Angel's banner in the face of the enemy. And to escort the Spartan while providing anti-elite support, you might be thinking a Predator Annihilator would do. But what if I told you there's a much more rare pattern of Predator from a darker time, with more esoteric weapon systems? Ladies and gentlemen, I give you the Deimos Predator, 2 of them in fact, taken with conversion beam cannons. 2 heavy bolters, a storm bolter, and a hunter-killer missile. The conversion beamer is a very themey choice. It has 1 shot with sustained D3, and the conversion ability ensures hit rolls of 4+ count as criticals if the target is more than 12 inches away. This pairs well with its armored spearhead ability, which should ensure most of its shots connect. And providing swift fire support are 2 javelin attack speeders, equipped with the javelin missile launcher, heavy bolter, and 2 hunter-killer missiles. GW wants you to paint your storm speeders black and add them to the Raven Wing, but I think the javelins make for a much more tasteful choice, even if only as a proxy storm speeder. But I digress. The javelins are here for versatile fire support through their ability, which grants them a D6-inch move after shooting. So they can play the line of sight game with their 14-inch move with fly, shooting and then dipping back behind obscuring terrain. Or using Deep Strike, they can set up, fire, and potentially get into areas within your opponent's 9-inch screen. Next is a unit of 5 Deathwing Terminators, taken with Storm Bolters, Power Fists, and 1 Cyclone Missile Launcher. They are in the list to Deep Strike in, and well,
I started blasting. Bang! Bang!
Next up are the backfield units. Camping on the home objective is a squad of intercessors. While an infiltrator squad does a better job screening against Deep Strike, intercessors do have sticky objectives, which can in itself aid in their ability to screen, or perform other tasks or actions. And hanging out in the backfield, I'd like a Dreadnought. Ideally, one with long-range weapons, to provide ranged fire support and help the intercessors should they be threatened. But not a Ballistus. Gimme that Dark Age Dread. Gimme that Daradio. Daradio Dreadnoughts have the same ability as the Ballistus, and are pretty much built for the same role, though the Daradio Dread has a 5-up invulnerable save, with a bit less toughness. This one has been loaded with the Hellfire Plasma Cannonade for versatility, and is equipped with a twin heavy bolter and the Iolos missile launcher. And serving as an anchor unit of sorts is a squad of 10 Hellblasters. While they're something of a oops plasma unit, I think with a little conversion work, you could make these guys into the spiritual successors of the 30k Dark Angels Interrupters. But if you'd rather not, I think it's more than okay to run them as Hellblasters, as I feel in the era Indomitus, the Dark Angels are in the unique position to marry their relic arsenal with the newer Primaris assets. Leading this unit is of course an Apothecary. It's just a solid pairing with the Hellblasters, which can shoot on death when their guns go hazardous. Made all the better by the Apothecary being able to return a fallen Hellblaster back to the unit, ideally so he can fire, go hazardous, and shoot on death again. And serving as a second leader to that unit is going to be our Warlord. And it is none other than the Supreme Grand Master of the Dark Angels, Azrael. Which makes sense. I mean, who else could sanction this many relic assets for use? Azrael complements the Hellblasters well. He's got his own plasma weapon, which is comparable to the Hellblasters' plasma incinerators. Just as functional, more devastating to the enemy, and not hazardous to himself. He also gives his unit a 4-up invulnerable save, which will make them that much more obstinate. And he gives every model in his unit sustained hits 1. On top of all of that, Azrael also provides you with a very precious 1 command point in your command phase, which I think pairs nicely with the Grim Retribution stratagem. And that's the list, clocking in at 1995 points. I'll be frank, this isn't the most competitive Dark Angels list. Hell, nearly half of the list is Legends units, and many of the working components could be further enhanced with enhancements. But then we wouldn't be able to take all of these units from the Age of Darkness. And besides, it leaves room for a follow-up Dark Angels thematic list build once their supplement releases. Looking at the numbers, the list boasts 149 wounds across 14 units and 49 models. And looking at these charts, we can see those wounds are distributed broadly at a variety of toughness profiles. That's a wrap on this very legendary Dark Angels thematic list build. Thanks for watching, and a special thanks to my patrons. If you like these videos and want to support what I do, consider becoming a patron or channel member. It's thanks to them I'm able to produce videos like this, which is why they have a place on the Roll of Honor. Much thanks to Julius Maximus, as well as my other generous patrons and channel members. There are certainly more ways to go about creating thematic lists, and so I invite you to share yours in the comments. And comment below with what factions you would like to see for future thematic list builds. Anyways, there are buttons for liking, sharing, and subscribing, so press the buttons you want to press, and I'll catch you in the next one.